The world of Yora stands on the brink of devastation. A relentless scourge of living plants and rampant nature threatens to consume the land, twisting once thriving landscapes into overgrown nightmares. Yet, even as this plague spreads, the living lands remain a breathtaking sight, wild, untamed, and full of mystery. You are the envoy, the Empire's last hope, tasked with uncovering the truth behind this unnatural uprising. Your mission is clear. Venture into the unknown, confront the chaos, and secure the future before nature itself reclaims it all. Okay, so before we get into the review, I need to list my computer specs. So basically, what I'm using to run this game is a 5800X 3D, a 4090, 32 gigabytes of RAM, a AW3225QF, which is a 3840 by 2160 4K monitor. Okay, so my first 2 hours spent with Avowed, I did not use FrameGen. I wanted to play the game naturally, no AI frames. Even though it makes the game run better, I just wanted to see what it ran like on the 4090 without all that nonsense or whatever you want to call it, right? So with that off, I was getting around 60 to 70 frames. I thought that was pretty consistent. I do think that I should have been getting more frames just because it's a 4090, the beast of a card. Obviously, my processor is last gen AM4, but I think I should have just had a little bit more performance without the frame gen. That was the first 2 hours in. Okay, and for my next session, I did use DLSS 4. I swapped it for the DLSS 3 using DLSS Swapper. Also, I turned on frame gen and it made a world of a difference. So usually in my exteriors, I was getting, or in the overworld, I was getting 60 to 70 frames, averaging that. Turned on frame gen, put on DLSS 4. Now I'm averaging 90 to 100 frames. When I go in caves and I go in dungeons, I'm at 112, 120 tops. Like, it is a world of a difference. It's great. I don't know why DLSS 4 didn't launch with the game. They probably tested with DLSS 3, which is why they wanted to implement that in the final release. That makes sense. They probably didn't have that much time to test DLSS 4, so they didn't want to ship it, which is completely understandable. So one thing I think that's important to cover is booting up the game. What will happen when you first start up the game? So if you're on PC, I know the experience is going to change. It's going to differ from Xbox and PC, right? But on PC, when you first boot up the game, it's going to generate shaders. And it's going to take a while. It's going to take about 10 or so minutes, depending on your computer. I have a pretty beefy rig. It took me about 10 to 12 minutes. Once all your shaders generate, or that it's done loading all your shaders, you'll be met with an accessibility screen. And basically, you can just change anything here that you want to change. Conversation subtitles, auto continue conversations, interaction icons, loot shimmer, third person view, head bobbing, anything that you deem that you don't like, or you want less of, or you want more of this is where you change it. Accessibility options. We all know about these. One thing that I thought was cool is that when you're at the start menu, you have the option to sign in with your Xbox account, right? And load saves from your Xbox. So basically like cross save. So like if you're playing on Xbox, maybe you're in your living room or something like that, or even eventually when the Xbox gets a handheld, you could take that save and just play it on PC too. It's just like The Witcher 3 where you can kind of cross save between platforms. That's awesome. We need that feature in more games, especially for single player games, because a lot of people have multiple devices. So this is good. I really like this. I love this being an option. I do hope that when this game eventually does come out on PlayStation, because I have a feeling it will, that they also do it with PlayStation and not just make it like a Xbox exclusive feature. So I wanted to get into some of the graphic options for PC. I was really perplexed why, one, there wasn't any HDR. Doesn't seem like there's any HDR on the PC version as of right now. And two, there's only windowed full screen and windowed or window mode options. Usually it goes full screen or exclusive full screen. Then you have borderless, which is windowed full screen, and then you have window. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I would have just liked the option. Like, yes, I'm using windowed full screen just because I have to. I don't like windowed, but I love the option for full screen or exclusive full screen. And then on the topic of HDR, I don't have the Xbox version, but if it's anything like Starfield had HDR support on Xbox day one, but the PC version had to wait. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't watched any other review yet, just because I wanted to go into my own review with my own thoughts and, not be persuaded. So I just kind of wanted to have a fresh outlook, my own outlook. So I don't know how Xbox is. If Xbox has HDR, it will eventually come to PC. I just think it's weird for a game in 2025 to release without HDR. Okay, so if you're a PC guy, you know about upscale options. So this game comes with TSR, temporal super resolution, AMD Fidelity FX3, and NVIDIA DLSS 3. So the only one it's missing is XESS, which is Intel's upscale technology. I don't know how hard it is to implement that, but I hope sometime in the future that they do. I personally don't use it, but I know people with Intel cards are going to pick this game up and they're going to play this game. So hopefully in the future, they add XESS. I wouldn't want those guys to miss out on their own upscale technology. Obviously, they can use temporal super resolution or just no upscale technology at all, but having your cards inherent upscale technology in a game, I'm sure it just makes people happy. I can't imagine it being that hard to implement. And I'm not going to go over all the settings here because a lot of it is basic, especially like the audio settings are, it's normal. All that is good. All right. And once you hit start game, you're going to be met with an intro that basically describes the lore of the land, your goals, what made you basically seek out this path and just move forward. It's basically just setting up your story, setting up why you're here, setting up everything for this game. Okay, so immediately after the intro, you're going to be met with a character customization screen. I know how I am, and I can get lost in creating a custom character. So I didn't want to spend too much time doing that and just waste all my other time reviewing the other sections. So I'm not going to spend as much time like making my character and reviewing this part because it's a character customization, right? We've done it plenty of times now. So I'm going to go over it, but just, we're just going to breeze by it. But basically, presets are weird and unique, right? So you have like this fungus flower bark growing out of your forehead. It's real weird, but once you play a little bit more of the game, you'll understand why. In my honest opinion, I felt like a lot of the hairstyles look good. There are some that look bad and just look like they're plopped on, but a lot of the hairstyles are really cool. Usually in some games, like, they just don't do a real good job with some hairstyles. But in this one, I feel like they did a great job. So I'm happy about that. Aesthetically, I wasn't a huge fan of the godlike features. You can turn these features off. You don't have to have them on, and you don't have to have both on. I only put one on my character because I couldn't have them running around looking goofy like that. And so regardless, if you have those features, those godlike features, you can turn them off. Basically, your character will still have them and people will still see you as that, but you visually don't show that on your character. That way, if you want to create your character and not have them look weird to you, you can do that. And then once you're done creating, customizing, and doing all that, you have the option to select your background, which is Arcane, Scholar, Court Augur, Noble, Scion or Sion, Vanguard Scout, and War Hero. So you have all these options. It's just basically your background and your upbringing and what you're proficient in and stuff like that. One thing I was really disappointed in the character customization was the name section. Basically, in like almost any other game, you have the option to kind of just randomize your name, right? I know they have that feature in Diablo. I know they have that feature in Baldur's Gate. So in here, that would have been really cool. Just being able to kind of spin a wheel and then it select like really cool like names from this time period that you could use. I would have really appreciated something like that. Okay, so let's get into the important detail of this review, which is gameplay. So personally, I really like playing these types of games in third person. When I was moving around in third person, it really felt like my guy was sliding around, like not really, like I didn't really feel his movement. I don't know if that makes sense, but I didn't really feel it. It really did feel like he was just sliding around, like he's on like skates or something. So I didn't really like that about the third person view. Okay, so let's talk about one of the most important gameplay loops, which is combat. I feel like they did a really good job with combat in terms of just mixing classes with each other. So you can play like wizard with like warrior, just having like a book in your hand with a dagger in another, or sword in another, or axe in another, or you could even you could have a book in one hand and a wand in another. They did such a good job with that. It is really fun. It is really great. There's just so many exciting combinations that you can run with that. And then there's so much, emphasis on your hits, like just like running up and stabbing someone, holding your weapon, and then just like poking them in the back. Like it all feels great. And then while you're doing that, you have the option to swift, move around. Like you can dodge back, you can dodge left, you can dodge right. It all uses stamina, but it all flows all really, really well. One thing I found very cool about combat was that even when you're losing, it's very cool. Like there's slow motion when the other character parries you. Like it's all like theatrics. Like it's just super cool. That you know, you hit them, they're kicking you. You got to dodge out of the way. There's certain moves you can't get hit by. You got to get out of there. When you fill up that yellow gauge on a boss, you'll do like a special combo on them. You can even do it on regular enemies too, but there's so many options here too in order to fight. You know, even what I'm doing is very basic to like what you could do in the future, right? Like there's just so many combinations and stuff. I think this is cool. I think they did a really good job with combat. This alone like could just keep me playing for hours. I was having so much fun just mixing like my dagger with my spells, jumping in and then jumping out, dodging. You know, I ran into a boss and his allies were healing him. Like this was just really cool. Like I had a lot of fun playing just like the combat of the game. I just think they did a really good job. You really feel the hits, especially if you're playing on controller. Like they did a good job. Okay, let's get into the next section, which is dialogue. So if you've played any Obsidian game, you've played Fallout New Vegas, you've played The Outer Worlds, you know when a game has that Obsidian touch when it comes to dialogue options. In this game, right off the bat, you're getting options to use your perception, your skill traits, your dexterity, and your background like class. So like whatever class you picked at the beginning, I picked the court augur. You can use those skills, you can use that background in your conversation, which really, if you know, it's an RPG, it really brings out your character and you really flow into that path. I just love the way they implemented skill traits into dialogue options like dexterity, your perception. You might be more keen to certain things, constitution, you might be more strong-willed, you might just be a strong character and just survive things. Like you can just will your way through these conversations with your background knowledge or your background, what you picked in the beginning, or your skill traits. And that is what Obsidian has always been about, like being able to talk your way out of a situation because, you know, my skill trait in this certain profession is really good, or, you know, maybe I'm super strong and people are scared of me. It's like, oh, hey, you know, so having that option is really cool. I always dig this with Obsidian games. And not every dialogue option is perfect. Don't get me wrong, right? So there are going to be some times where you might look at them, you might be like, oh, all these options are bad. Like, I don't want to say any one of these. I've had that moment like multiple times, right? I am very picky though in my characters, and maybe other people aren't, but there are some times where I wish I could just pick none of the options. So once you get a little further into the game, you'll start to get companions. Even right off the bat, you really just get a companion, and they'll start to be three-way conversations between characters. And I thought that was really cool. So you'll talk to somebody and your companion will also chime in and say something. And I just feel like that really gives like a sense of realism in the world. You know, your buddy, if you're doing something, they're not always just going to sit there and be like just silent, very stoic, you know, like they're going to chime in, especially if you guys have been traveling for a while. Like I'm sure your input is well deserved, right? Especially if you've been traveling with this dude for like however long. So it's really cool to see that now in these games. See your partner chime in into the conversation. But there are times where I notice where your partner or your companion will chime in, and it just seems like the other character that they're chiming into or trying to talk to just doesn't really care. They just continue dialogue as option. So I'm sure if you had like another companion there, like that dialogue option would have been the same regardless.
Oh, hey, Sansa. Comes on a little strong, that's all. He doesn't bite.
But to meet you, what an honor.
So I don't know if that's something they can fix, but I didn't really like that because like sometimes like Kai would say something and then it seemed like the other character just either he didn't care or they were just continuing their dialogue options. So there was some times where three-way conversations weren't really that immersed. There's also like some funny like wink dialogue. I personally haven't done it myself yet just because I think it's cringe, but you have the option there. I'm sure there's some type of romance, whatever, something that you can do with some characters, but I haven't explored that yet. I also love the options to say nothing. Sometimes not every response deserves an answer, or I always don't have to give a reply. So I love the option sometimes to just be like, all right, yeah, I'm not going to say anything, continue, and not say anything and just let them continue talking. So I love the option for that. Obviously, you don't get that all the time, but throughout some conversations, you'll just have the option to just be quiet. And while we're here, I just want to talk a little bit about companions. I don't have a lot to say, but the AI companions are very perceptive. You're walking through a dungeon, they're listing out things about the history of the dungeon or the history of the Pilgrim Road or whatever, or the Pilgrim Passage. They're giving you the history of the land, just walking through something, right? Even in combat, the companions are very perceptive. Hey, on your right. Hey, on your left. Hey, watch your back. Like, the companion is telling you these things actively. So it's really cool to just see this. Personally, I really love Kai. If you've played any of the Mass Effect games, he's Garrus, and that's just cool to me. And they just sound so alike. You can just tell right off the bat that it's Garrus. Another thing that is very Mass Effect inspired to me is the companion wheel. You can bind some of these skills to like a hotkey, but you can also pull up this menu and basically select the skill that you want your companion to do. So this is really cool. Just like flow of combat. Obviously, it kind of takes you out of it because it pauses the whole game. But then again, you can bind these moves to a certain hotkey, and you can just do it with the flow of combat. But I just think it's so cool that, you know, this is a feature. Like, isn't a exclusive Mass Effect feature, but it's very similar to Mass Effect. And then you also have like Garrus in the game. I thought it was cool. I think this feature is cool. And it gets you really active with your companion. It's not just you doing all the work. And I just want to say, I'm just a huge fan of the companions traveling with you, being very perceptive, being very lively. Like, there's life to them instead of just being a traveling companion NPC and just killing any of the monsters that attack you. So it's just very cool to see. Even like after something big happens, they're like, hey, can we talk at the camp after this? They also have like their own stats menu, so you can put in stats to their skills, just like you would put stats on your skills. And while on the topic of companion skills, let's now get into the next topic of our skills, which is basically our abilities and just our character itself. Every time you level up, you just have the option to get a skill point and use that skill point on either your might, your constitution, your dexterity, etc., just basically your core skills there. But you also have the option to use your points for your subclasses, so like fighter, ranger, wizard, all that. And each point that you put in there will either make a certain weapon stronger, like your wand or your sword or your dagger or whatever, or you can get new moves for each class. I know the wizard has like some fireball moves, has like some electricity, flamethrower, like really cool stuff that you can basically just make your class stronger and stronger. They did a really good job in making it to where if you level up like your fighter or your wizard, there's a significant boost in damage, significant boost in just like all the spells that you can use. And they just did a really good job just making it feel like you can gradually feel yourself getting stronger with each and each level up. And I think another important thing while we're here talking about the level up system is the inventory system. The inventory system is amazing. I just love the idea of just being able to transmog anything. And if you don't know what that means, is basically is let's say I'm wearing this like really ugly chest plate, but I want to look like I'm wearing something else. Basically just like a aesthetic thing, cosmetic thing. You can just do that. Like, it doesn't cost anything. I think you just press R2 on whatever item you want to transmog, and you just become like wearing that item. Like, you just start wearing that item. So it is really cool how they implemented that. Usually in games, it just takes, it's a lot of effort, right? It's like, oh, you got to go to the shop and like transmog this, pay this money or whatever. And this game is click of a button. You don't have to pay gold. You don't have to go to some wizard or whatever. It is just there. So I think that's really cool. Not only do I think that's cool, but you can also just send stuff to the stash, right? So let's say you're heavy. You know, if you ever play Skyrim, if you're heavy, you're either going to have to drop a bunch of stuff, or you're going to have to trot your ass all the way back down to like your home and stash your stuff. But in Avowed, all you have to do is just put your stuff in your stash. So let's say I'm overweight. All I have to do is send my stuff to my stash from my inventory screen. So that is really cool. I love that. I love the idea that just means when you pick up something, you're not just hunkered down and you have to like walk miles very slowly in order to get to a point where you can drop that stuff off and continue playing the game normally again. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the UI there's not a lot of things that bother me about the UI, but specifically the stamina bar. I feel like it's the stamina bar and the oxygen bar when you're underwater. Those things are too big. When you're in combat, you have this huge bar on your screen. Obviously, it tells you like how much energy you have, but like I feel like it could just be tucked away in the corner, tucked away at the bottom or something. Like it doesn't need to be in the middle of my screen. Why is it there in the middle of my screen? It's so big, so massive. Like I can pay attention to my stamina bar if it's tucked away. Like I can manage my stamina. I didn't like the fact that it was so big. Obviously, it's really important that you manage your stamina well in this game so you can attack or whatever, because everything uses stamina. Even if you use the wand, it uses stamina. So I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of that stamina bar just being there in combat. Being so big there, especially that oxygen bar when you're underwater, like it's just way too big. What are they doing? And if you go in the accessibility options, I was looking through it, there's no way to minimize this, like minimize these bars, or, specifically these bars. Like I'm looking just to, okay, here's my stamina bar. I just want to bring that down. I don't want to bring down the whole menu with it. I just want to bring down the stamina bar. So I wasn't a huge fan of the UI when it came to those things. Okay, and since we're already talking about UI, we can kind of transition into the mouse and keyboard support. So when you use a mouse and keyboard, your UI actually changes. So the UI that is for a controller is different for a mouse and keyboard. And so while I was playing mouse and keyboard, I found that the UI was very active. So if I'm holding right mouse button, like the UI is changing for my spells or whatever. It's popping up in the middle. It's changing that. I also have more key bindings, more numbers in the middle. It's just very active compared to your controller's subtleness of the UI. I much prefer controller's UI subtleness than I did mouse and keyboard. One thing I will say is that inventory management feels way better on mouse and keyboard. It is night and day. Obviously, if I'm on control, I got to press up on the D-pad, analog, all this stuff to kind of manage my inventory. But on mouse and keyboard, like it really is just like drag, do this, boom, like click here. All right, if I want this, like everything's just so much easier when it comes to inventory management on mouse and keyboard. That's not always the case for games like this, because usually, especially for an Xbox game like this, controller is the first thing put in mind. But it seems like they worked out the kinks with mouse and keyboard too and made it just a very user-friendly interface for mouse and keyboard. And another thing that I found a little tough on mouse and keyboard was just dodging. On controller is real easy to dodge to your left, dodge to your back, dodge to your right. Like those are really simple things to do on a controller. On mouse and keyboard, I found that I was getting like carpal tunnel trying to do that shit. It was just really tough for me. I'm a huge mouse and keyboard player. Like I've got my own little gaming numpad and everything, but I don't know. I just found it a little tough to do. Wasn't a huge fan of it. After like a couple like hours of playing, like it kind of was like easy, but that first like hour I was like, dang, this is kind of tough. So that was one thing that was kind of hard to get used to. Some of the default key bindings I found perplexing, especially if you play like Skyrim, like the sheath. Like if you want to sheath your weapons, it was T. That was the default key binding to do that. I thought that was weird. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that. I changed it immediately. And then third person is U. So like if you want to switch to third person, you got to reach all the way to Timbot 2, pressing U to switch your perspective. I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't know why. I don't know who thought that was a good key binding. Obviously, you have the option to change these key bindings, but just talking about it from a default standpoint, I thought that was a bad key binding button. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this section, but I feel like it's important. So I did try to play this on my Steam Deck, and I had everything on low. I had the FSR on performance mode, and it just performed really badly. It was sub 30 frames average. Like it just, to me, it just wasn't good. To me, it wasn't playable. Obviously, everyone is different. I can't play that game like below 30 frames. There's some times where it's going to dip into 24, 22, 18, right? But at the same time, while it's also dipping into those low frame rates, it's looking really blurry because you have FSR on blurry. It's just not good. It just looks blurry. It's not clear. I wasn't a huge fan of this performance on the Steam Deck. It's playable, but it's not playable for me. Like I said, everyone's different. Oh, also, I know there's some software out there called lossless scaling. I know a lot of people use that. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I know some people use it just to get a little bit more performance out of their system. So it might be worth looking into if you're a Steam Deck enjoyer like myself. Okay, and this section is just like very small, like nitpicks that I had. Like they're not serious and they're not deal breaking or anything, but it's just something that I was like, why is this way, right? So let's get into the first one. So when you're in third person mode and you're aiming at something, it's really hard to like open whatever you're trying to open or grab whatever you're trying to grab. Like it is really tough. And while I'm on this topic, because I forgot to mention it earlier, I really like the looting system in this game, right? So they've learned from Skyrim, right? In Skyrim, you had to basically when you looted someone, you took you to this whole new menu, right? And it paused the whole world. In this game, it's like the world is still active, right? You just walk up to the body, boom, loot, boom, you're good, right? So they learned from their mistake in Skyrim, and there's mods to fix that now, obviously. And they learned in Fallout that that's the way that you do looting. So I was really a fan of that. I like that. I should have mentioned that earlier. Another nitpick that I had was the poison HUD. When you get poisoned in game, it puts this like green hue, like green yellow hue on your screen, and it's just there forever, obviously, until the poison is over. But it just, I don't know, it just takes you out of the game. Like it is very distracting. Like, yes, I get that I'm dying from poison, but like, get this off my screen. I just wish they would make it more subtle. It is very bright, especially if you got like an OLED monitor. Like it is just, it's so annoying, especially if it's dark time too. Like it's just overly green, overly bright. Like I wish there was some way to either just turn it off completely or just not have it there. Another nitpick that I had was footsteps in water puddles. Right, so if you have like, if you see a puddle in the game, you step in it, there is no like indication that you're actually stepping on it, right? You're just kind of stepping on solid ground, but it's still making that like your foot is in the water noise, so you're hearing that swashing, that swooshing around the water, but you're not seeing it. You're not seeing your footsteps in the water. I don't know about you, but that bothers me. It's a very small thing, but like I'm noticing it. Like my feet's in the water. I'm pushing through this water, and visually, I don't see anything. So personally, I think that's a thumbs down. I don't like that at all. Very small thing, not a big deal, not a game breaker. Just like, what are they doing? How are you gonna do that? And I'm pretty sure I mentioned this earlier, but some camera angles and dialogue is very weird. Like it has like your character looking like very awkwardly, like his chin like up, like where the bottom of your monitor is. I don't know. It's just some weird angles that they do in dialogue. You'll see it every time to time. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of that. I don't know if it's a bug. I don't know if that's intended, but there's some angles that are just very strange. And so they have a camping system in the game, basically where you camp and you rest and you upgrade your gear, stuff like that. And every time you enter this camp, it's always nighttime. So like if it's daytime and then boom, you go to camp, it's going to be nighttime. So there's no way to use your camp in daytime, right? So I think that's a little goofy. I don't know. Like I'm not just going to camp like at nighttime, right? I'm going to camp during the day sometimes in the afternoon. I think whatever time period it is, I should be able to camp. Like, so if it's morning of the day and I go camping, like I should just be able to do that. Should just be able to go camping. I don't like the idea of every time I go to the camp, it's going to be nighttime, and that's just the way it is. And this is one of my last nitpicks, is that companions will sometimes, like if you use their skill to like break down like this web or burn this wood, they do it from like really far away, and it looks really stupid. Like it looks so dumb. Like they'll be like miles away and they're like, okay, I got you. And then they'll just blow this tree down. I don't know. I thought it was a little goofy. Or they'll like shoot the web down or whatever. And you don't have to use them. You can use your own magic and whatever, fire sword or whatever you got, electric sword. I don't even know if there's electric sword, but whatever you have, like you can do that to do whatever obstacle you have to go through. But I just think it's cool to use your companions to do some stuff that you can't do. Oh, one more is, so journal entries. This was a big one for me. And I know this would have taken a lot of time because I haven't seen every journal entry in the game, obviously, but a lot of the journal entries, when you read them, it gives you a description of imagery. Oh, you read the page, it's slashed out. You see like scratches on the book or something. Like it's telling you like this deep detail on like how the page looks, how the image looks, what you see. You can only make out one part. Instead of giving you that imagery, like put that into a visual, into the game, right? So like if there's a page scraped out, barely you can read the handwriting, let us see that. Let us not envision it ourselves, but show that to the player. Like that would have been sick. There's so many like journals in the game, and if you're not going to do it for all journals, at least do it for the ones on the main quest, right? there's so many journals that I've picked up, and it's like, oh, you can only make out this certain part because like there's like black smoke, or like someone put their finger through it or knifed it or cut it in half or whatever. Like there's so many journals like that in the game. Well, visualize that, especially if it's a main quest. I can get not doing like all the side stuff, but if it's like a main quest and you have to pick up that journal and read it and figure out what the heck's going on, put that imagery into a visual. Don't have the audience, don't have the players have to guess that image or read that image. I know, so I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I thought if they took the time out to describe how the page was and how you found it, and you can only make out this one sentence, you might as well visualize that so players can see that. That would have been really cool. And just one last thing I wanted to touch on about the world of Yore is that the world is very beautiful. They call it the Living Lands. The lighting is absolutely beautiful. I played with RTX on the whole entire time, and I was getting pretty good frame rates. I don't know how it's going to be on Xbox, but on PC, it was running super well. Lighting is amazing. One thing is, if you're a crazy psychopath, this isn't New Vegas. If you don't know, you can't just run around killing everybody. So I've tried poking my companion. I've tried poking other random NPCs, and it just doesn't work like that. So if you're expecting like some type of sociopath, like crazy, you can just kill everybody, like game, this ain't it. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's all I got. This is my first game review, really, so I don't know if I did a good job or not. Let me know down below. Regardless if I did a good job or not, this video is getting posted, and I'm gonna let the world roast me. But let me know what you think about Avowed. This is the world of Avowed. You, the envoy, are sent out on a journey to figure out what is going on. Why are creatures, why are living things, nature coming together to destroy creatures, living creatures? You, the envoy, have to figure it out. You're set on a journey to figure this out. And I just think this game does so many things well. Obviously, I'm not even halfway into the game, but it is just, it's so fun to me. Obsidian just really did it again, knocked it out of the park, and just everything. Dialogue options, combat, everything's great about this game. Obviously, it's not a perfect game. I don't do ratings, so I'm not gonna give it a rating, but I do think it's a really good game. It's really fun. The gameplay loop is great. Dialogue options, great. Just quality of life stuff is amazing. They've done such a good job with this Avowed. I play this game 3 or 4 times. There's so many builds I'm already thinking of in my head. Like I want to do shield and wand, or shield and like axe, or great sword. Like there's just so many cool like little builds that you can do. So I don't know. I'm excited to play more. I hope you guys give this game a shot. If you're on PlayStation, go ahead, get you an Xbox, try this game out. I have no idea when it's gonna get put on Xbox, but I hope this review served you well. I hope I was able to answer some questions if you were on the fence about it, or just, just wondering what the game was about. Like I said, this is my first review, so don't be too harsh. Actually, be harsh, because I need that. I need that in my life. I need that. But thank you once again. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Oh, like the video, give it a watch, share it around. Appreciate you. All right, now I'm really out. Thank you.
Take that, you monstrosity! Well done!
What happened to